Hello and welcome to the Opportunity Talks, powered by the EPFL Future Leaders platform. In each episode, we bring you conversations with cutting-edge innovators, disruptors, and dreamers who dare to go off the beaten path and drive meaningful change. In this episode, Laura has a conversation with Murillo and Louise Skajem, co-founders of Resting Reef, which offers to transform the ashes of those who have died into regenerative oyster reef memorial structures.
Hello, Louise and Laura. Thank you very much for being part of the Opportunity Talk, part of the Future Leader platform. To begin with, it would be great to hear from you. Who are you? Introduce yourself, and also if you can tell us more about Resting Reef.
Yes. Hello, my name is Murillo. I'm a Mexican designer. I studied in the Royal College of Art, but also the Imperial College London. It was a dual master's called Global Innovation Design. And right now I'm a co-founder and also the head of experience and service design from Resting Reef.
I'm Louise Skajem. I'm from Norway, but I've lived here in the UK, I think the past 7 years. Did both my undergrad in design here and also my master's, where I met Aura. And I'm currently doing Resting Reef full-time as head of product and sustainability.
So Resting Reef is a sustainable memorial service that allows people to transform their ashes into beautiful artificial reef structures to regenerate marine life in our afterlife. And how we do it is that we take the ashes, we create a biomaterial, a formula that contains these ashes, and also crushed shells from the food waste industry. We recycle them. And then with this formula, what we can do is 3D print it into these personalized reef structures that are then placed in the ocean and then monitor to see the progress and make sure that they are serving their purpose of regenerating marine life. And it was a startup that started as part of a competition that was initiated by King Charles, Sir Johnny Ive, and the Royal College of Art. And then in this competition, students were asked to come up with ideas to tackle climate change. In that moment, Luisa was studying the topic of oysters. She was looking into all the benefits that oysters have, and this is something that she can explain a little bit more afterwards. And I was focusing on the topic of death. I was researching why is it that it's a very difficult topic to talk about. I was trying to understand the grief process. And then when there was this competition, we came together and we naturally kind of merged the different subjects that we were studying and little by little developed Resting Reef. And right now, this is a startup that we're doing full time. It's our job. We are based in the UK, and we are preparing to open our first pilot reef. And the idea with this pilot reef is for us to be able to deploy some structures in a real marine environment and then monitor them so that we have a good validation of what we're doing and hopefully be able to commercialize and be available in the market very soon.
Brilliant. That's very clear. Thank you very much. Fascinating how the journey started. It's very, very interesting. And I guess this is the perfect space to start with the questions that we would like to ask, which is the first one is really about the challenge that you decide to focus on. So why this specific challenge?
So we're dealing with actually two quite large problems that most people are not aware of. First of all, death is a taboo. So we don't really talk about the death care services industry, but it's actually quite a polluting industry in the way a lot of traditional practices are being done. And then there's also, let's say in the UK, it has run out of burial plots, more or less. So there's this kind of demand for creating new spaces, which also increases, let's say, deforestation, not only in the UK, but all over the world. Like in the States, 100 million acres of forest every year is deforested just to create burial plots and caskets within the industry. And then there's embalming fluids that goes into the groundwater, and you have cremation that pollutes the air. And then you also have creating burial plots with steel and cement and all of these materials that goes into building large cemeteries, for example. On the other side, we're dealing with marine restoration. So the marine life around the world is really suffering. A lot of native species have gone extinct. And so in the UK, we started talking with marine restorations around oyster reefs. And what we learned that not only 95% of the native oyster reefs are gone in the UK, and this number is 85% in the world. But it's also an incredibly underfunded practice or industry. So there was this gap between a very big problem and need for restoration, but also they spent most of their time applying for government public funding and donations to do the great work that they're doing. So that's where we kind of looked into what could we do to help inform and put funding into, for example, oyster restoration here in the UK. And the reason we wanted to look at oysters is because they're as important as coral reefs. People don't know that much about oysters. Corals have gotten much more media attention, but oysters are the ocean's main filtering system. One oyster filters 200 liters of water a day. And they create habitats for juvenile fish before they can enter the sea and then benefit, let's say, the fishing industry, but also they protect from erosion. So by taking away these natural wave barriers, you kind of have all other issues on land as well happening. So yeah, that's the challenges we are tackling, and not only trying to tackle them, but also inform the world about these problems exist.
Brilliant. There's definitely like a perfect kind of alignment between human challenges and natural challenges. So how the two things are very, very much interconnected. So like a very, very wicked problem, I guess, in this sense.
Yeah. Yes.
But as we talk about the social, the aspect you decided to focus on, what therefore is your motivation? Why you, I mean, you explained a little bit at the beginning when you describe how you met, but if you kind of explain to us your motivation, why you decide to focus on this topic in particular.
Yeah, I can start with my personal motivation, and then maybe you can explain yours. So as I mentioned, I was studying in my master the topic of death because this was based on a personal experience. I lost my father, and this was a very traumatic experience, just dealing with the process of grief and also going through traditional funerals. I felt very uncomfortable, and I felt that this was not the way for me to memorialize a loved one, right? It felt that I was in a situation that felt very gray, very sad. And of course, there are all of those elements, but at the same time, I was trying to look for alternatives to memorialize my father. And I saw that there were not a lot of spaces or alternatives for this. So that's when I started studying the subject of death. And I was also involving other people collecting stories. And I realized that this is a collective experience, and that currently there's a lot of people that don't feel reflected with traditional practices in the funeral industry, and also maybe they don't feel also reflected with religious practices. We've also seen that there's been an increased demand for green alternatives, and this is because people are starting to get climate conscious, but at the same time because they are thinking for different alternatives that are a little bit more innovative. We've seen that the funeral industry hasn't changed for around 100 years. So we said, well, definitely there needs to be a change here. So there was this emotional motivation, but also after doing some research, I realized that there was an opportunity for doing this. And that also fueled the interest and motivation for doing Resting Reef.
Yeah, and in my case, I would say probably from the beginning of my design journey, like almost 8 years ago, I got familiar with climate change and also the aspects of sustainability and, for example, circularity and these approaches to innovate. And so for me, focusing my design practice around sustainability has always been very important, like looking into fashion sustainability. And then when I started my master's, I wanted to work with seaweed. And then as I was exploring the coast in Norway, I came across oysters. So that kind of naturally brought me into that topic and world. So yeah, my motivation is very much to kind of try to make a change. And even though, let's say, death is an area a lot of people don't dare to deal with, I think all industries needs to improve for the better for us to tackle climate change, basically.
Thank you very much. Very, very interesting to see how the path has been intertwined with sort of kind of emotional patterns that goes into something that is quite, is really worth it to spend your time on. And then I guess like I probably sense that's where this answer might go. But the next question is about your approach. What is your approach to tackle the biggest challenges you're looking at by intertwining the different interests, and why do you think this is innovative?
Yes, so we are basically building Resting Reef with an approach of creating a service that it's human-centered and that takes the needs and desires of our customers to do something that is meaningful for them. In Resting Reef, we want to create long-lasting legacies that last for generations, where people feel that they are creating something good or leaving something great behind. So in a way, what we're trying to do is create all of these practices and services that serve them. And for example, when we are designing our reef structures, we see that this is something that needs to serve nature, but at the same time, we understand that these will be memorials. So we're looking into how the design of these reef structures can be desirable so that people feel that they are being transformed into something beautiful and that we are also able to comfort loved ones. So that's from the side of the service, but also there's a lot of innovation when it comes to how we are approaching to the part of restoring nature. First of all, we're doing it through an industry that, how Louise was explaining it, we are kind of merging or trying to tackle the problems that can be seemingly unrelated. But then when you look into the way that we are connecting all the dots, it kind of was like an eureka moment, and it makes a lot of sense. So it's also from creating our formula that contains the ashes and also create a biomaterial to create the reef structures to the way that we design the reef structures so that, you know, it takes biomimicry as inspiration and that it actually feels as a structure that even if it's an artificial reef structure, it has the ability to biointegrate with the environment and actually help oyster reefs or other species in the marine environment to settle.
Yeah, and I would also like to add, as marine restoration for a lot of people maybe feel quite distant, and even though there are marine protected areas, those are maybe often not really followed, let's put it that way. So there's like trawling happening or illegal fishing and activities that does still harm the environment. But we think the people's respect for, let's say, a cemetery or the people that's passed away, that respect can also be translated to maybe that marine restoration site. So let's say the people or the local community know that their ancestors or maybe their neighbor's daughter or like someone they know or are familiar with is having their resting place in that area. It's more respect to stay away from any illegal fishing activities or destroying that marine habitat and allowing it to thrive over time and get back, and also increasing the personal connection to restoration and interest in seeing it succeeding, basically.
I was going to actually to ask you, like, on this side, that because you described the first sentence as you already said, this was about, this is a human-centered service. But then as you continue talking, and then Louise added more content, is it this idea of respect that designs the intersections between human and nature to a certain extent? Is this idea of, like, I don't know, this was my interpretation, but I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, for us, Resting Reef has two approaches: the human-centered approach when it comes to the service and the way that we approach people and support them during the grief process. But then definitely there's the nature center approach, designing for nature and making sure that the structures that we do serve nature and the purpose of regenerating marine life.
Mm. And there's also trends showing there's a decline in religious practices, but still people have this need to connect and create meaning, especially when they lose someone. So we still want to create that space where you can find meaning maybe in nature or doing something good for the planet and creating a legacy that when you look back, you can say, oh yeah, my grandparents are a foundation of this reef here that is now flourishing. Yeah.
Thank you very much for explaining. It's very, very it's a beautiful concept indeed that actually touches the feeling of anyone, I guess. So hopefully like this will grow and grow and grow. But I guess now like the question is more about like more practicalities, I guess, because we had this beautiful idea, you met, the concept worked, and then you went through the competition. But I guess if you can explain more about the process for getting this brilliant idea into something that is an entrepreneurship opportunity, whatever is the shape you have a startup. So can you describe that? So what happened from the beginning to, let's say, now?
Yes, so when we were looking into the concept of Resting Reef, it was during a phase that we were also part of accelerator programs. And in these accelerator programs, we were able to see or understand how to build the business model and make sure that our idea was solving a problem, but at the same time that we were allowing it to exist. And from the beginning, we've been very interested in doing a lot of market research, approaching to the potential customers, understand with interviews and surveys what they need, and also see how we can incorporate it into our model. We've been also understanding the different ways of producing our reef structures and how these can scale into different parts of the world. So I think for us, it's important to build the idea, but at the same time, being able to find good partnerships and collaborators. Of course, taking charge of the part of funding and look into different grants or awards, or even connect with people that can support us on that side. It's also about the team. Who do we incorporate to work in Resting Reef, and what are the alliances that we create? So I think now that we're working on this full time, we are able to see all the different layers that we're required to do in order to do a successful business. And hopefully with this successful business, then we will be able to restore more and more. And as we grow, we will be able to not only impact the UK, but also many parts of the world that needs restoration.
Yeah. And going back to what Aura actually mentioned at the very beginning, often scientists and designers are looking into problem solving, but they're maybe not asked to think about, who's paying for this product, or what's your business model, or how are you going to make it kind of exists further than just the concept. And that is something we learned from the beginning, was like, okay, this project needs to self-sustain itself financially as well in order to have any impact at all. And yeah, that's an advice I would say for anyone trying to solve a problem, is to try to think in a creative way, maybe not like even thinking outside the box. How can this self-sustain itself and be a profitable business, but also then profit nature or the problem you're solving? Yeah.
And I guess I'm stopping on something that both of you said. This is my full-time job, and I can empathize very positively with you, because I know how much kind of work it takes, and this is is one of the first achievements. Like, I'm working on this full-time, so like it's great to hear the phrase. But I guess now, like that, I know that you're in the process of growing. Things are like taking little shape. But if you want to give an advice to kind of anyone that would like to kind of start a similar journey like yours, what you would recommend? Something that you would like to something you wished that happened, something you wish to have done, something you wish it was not happening, I guess, in both sense.
I would say that, when we graduated, we looked into our budget of like, how long could we do this without having, let's say, income. So it gave us a bit of runway, but we were quite privileged that right after we graduated, we got an Innovate UK grant, and that secured us, salary and be able to spend money on customer discovery or further prototyping. And that was, I would say, a pretty unique and great opportunity for us to dedicate, full time and believing in what we do. I would recommend, like, looking back, I think the networking has been crucial to what we do. Like, we have from the beginning a knowledge that maybe we're not marine biologists or engineers or experts in the death care service in the industry. So we've always reached out to experts, talking with them and having their input shape what we're doing, and bridging all of these expertise into Resting Reef. So it's based on science, but that it's, incorporates the human relations as well, and being a sensitive product.
Yeah, and I guess also I think something that was very important for us was, before taking a full-time position, we discuss between ourselves, how do we see ourselves moving forward, and what do we see, what is the vision for Resting Reef, and kind of having these ideas aligned or understanding what are the different expectations. It also made us be able to go further and kind of go together in this journey. So definitely I think it's something that needs to be an idea that you really think that could have an impact, and at the same time that you are invested in it, and that you feel that by putting your time and effort and even sometimes resources, there could be a potential of creating something good. And kind of with the progress, being able to validate and understand how can you shift or how can do things differently if it's needed, always being open to pivoting if that's the case. But also I would say that having a team where you're able to go together through that journey is important.
And we actually, I think, got some advice or input at an early stage from some successful startup founders. And they said, yeah, we didn't do this full time after we graduated. It was a uni project and it kind of lingered, but we wanted to go into our own careers, but realized after a few years that career wasn't for them. So then they went back to their kind of startup idea and then went full into it. So us also acknowledging, if we don't maybe have the funding, it's okay to put Resting Reef on part-time or 30% or something, so we can at least, sustain ourselves and still try to get that big funding opportunity so we can jump back into Resting Reef again. But if you go from full-time to less priority, it doesn't mean that you've failed your business, basically.
This is a very good advice, because I mean the funding part, who pays for my salary, is super important, and the emphasis you gave that even though it's not full time, but you have the idea, the passion, just go for it, and then the failure is part of the thing you should accept, part of growing the confidence even for you to be part of that. So thank you very much. I think this is a very important point to make and sharing with the audience. I guess as a last question, I mean, one of the last questions I have is we discuss about the challenge, the big challenge, and how from that you created your idea, your entrepreneurship, your business and your startup. But now that I know that you started, do you see how your contribution as a startup could make an impact in society? So it's the other way around. Now that you're there, you position in let's say in the different level of the business where here your startup could be very likely be positioned. But where do you see the impact could be through your work?
Well, we try very hard to incorporate sustainability, let's say, in everything we do. So a sustainable financial model, but the materials and process, but also how we treat our employees and also our customers. And so let's say having a diverse team is important, and also showing face of female leadership. Hopefully we can inspire, other young women to tackle complex problems and jump into innovative ideas and not, feeling scared, that it's a scary place to go on and tackle big challenges. So hopefully we can be role models, and also creating spaces within our company that, can lift other women as well, in leading positions, and be role models for further generations as well.
And I guess when it comes also to the vision and mission that we have, is this aim of transforming as well the funeral industry, or at least providing other alternatives, and giving people the tools of choosing something that is sustainable and at the same time something meaningful. For us is also very important, as we were mentioning before, the awareness of everything related to the polluting industry, and how it is a bit outdated sometimes, but at the same time having the courage to put on the table topics like death and discuss about the importance of, planning ahead, thinking about your future legacy, thinking about the different alternatives that you choose, and how by doing so you can have an impact for the planet, and that you can create something at the same time meaningful for yourself and your loved ones.
Yeah, that's in a way, I would say, creating climate action for the individual. Because a lot of people get quite frustrated when they're like, what can I do? Like, I'm already recycling, like what else can I do? And so this being another alternative where you're actually having impact in your afterlife, can feel quite appealing, hopefully, for people.
I think it's also quite liberating in a sense that by, let's say, put on the table, as you mentioned the word taboo different times, and something that is very intimate to a certain extent, but it's not, it depends on the culture, of course, you're coming from, but also to link that to the idea of your legacy, because to some extent, the funeral, the end of life celebrates somehow the new life. And this, celebrating his legacy is quite fascinating, interesting. And also, to be honest, to see both of you here, like talking to us, and then like kind of the young you are, and also like kind of the thing that we can do that is very kind of, is great to see that. So like I think it's definitely like one of the impact that will definitely create is rippling effect in the next future. How do you think you will see yourself and the project and the impact and all the little trigger and leverage you moving through the projects, let's say in kind of 5 years, 10 years time? Where do you see yourself going?
We see our vision is that we can have resting reef sites all over the world, and being as local as cemeteries are in most local communities these days, you have access to a local resting reef. But also, let's say you actually just want to be somewhere totally different that feels like heaven, so maybe you want to be in Maldives, then that's also an option. So we see ourselves, as we're scaling, it just means being able to restore more sites that needs restoration, and also creating more of that option to be in a reef memorial near you if you want to have close proximity, basically.
Do you want to add anything, Laura?
Yeah, well, I will say that right now we are very much R&D intensive. So it's mainly trying to do, our pilot reef, validating our formula and doing a lot of research. But I definitely see Resting Reef as a service that it's able to impact a lot of people and reach out to a lot of people. We see it as a service that could be maybe available for everyone in their funeral in the corner shop or the funeral home at the corner. And I kind of think that it's related to what Luisa was saying, being available all around the world, but also being able to have a lot of individuals that are impacting with their legacies in a meaningful way. And hopefully being able to also restore oysters, but also marine endangered ecosystems that we need to restore as soon as possible.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Where do you see your next challenges or future challenges by working on the startup? So in the UK, there are certain licenses that you need in order to place something on the seabed to protect the environment. So those are hurdles we need to go through, and we have already gotten in touch, and we're in that process of finding out what type of licenses we need and we can have. Other challenges is also, I would say, the acceptance, because this is a very new, different approach to death, and
death is, well, not only a taboo, but is also a tradition that's barely changed for hundreds of years. So to change this kind of view of afterlife and doing something very different, that might be, or probably be, a hurdle for us, but also showing the importance of, let's say, oyster reefs the same way as coral reefs have gotten the general public knowledge of it needing support and restoration.
And I would say that we've always agreed that Resting Reef is not aiming to change the traditional or religious practices that people have. In a way, we know that this is something that is very personal, but we definitely think that there needs to be alternatives to choose from. So just being able to open that specific niche in the market for what we're doing is quite important. And when it comes to sustainability, I guess, right now, in order to create our formula, we are using cremated ashes. But of course, we see that cremation is still a process that it's polluting. So the ability of being able to transition to a more sustainable formula, it's very important. We are quite excited because there's a process called aquamation, where instead of the body being decomposed in a chamber where it's burned, it's decomposed in a chamber with water. And this process is 7 times less energy intensive, and it has less emissions. So also being able to create our formula and develop it as the society starts adopting these new processes as well, it will be a challenging, but we definitely see that at some point we will be able to have these as normalized processes, and we'll be able to then have a formula that is a green formula as well.
Yeah, and these are very well phrased challenges. Thank you very much for sharing that. That kind of gives a clear idea, like it's on the practicalities, getting the license, but also on the perception. So like the acceptance is something that definitely you need to account for, and it is great to be aware of. I think this is the first step to go. And I'm looking forward to see this growing and be much more implemented across the world. Like, to be like the part of the oyster in Maldives actually feels quite a part of something big. Thank you very much, then.
Thank you for listening to the Opportunity Talks, powered by the EPFL Future Leaders platform. For more information, please visit futureleaders.tools.